Greetings, this is Dr. Jess. Welcome to Health Hacks with Dr. Jess. This week, what we will do is wrap up our talk about the genes. Let's review what we've already learned. Let's remember that genes are unchanging. Genes do control all your hereditary characteristics from one generation to another, but for our purposes in the biochemical pathways, you need to know that the genes that you look at you've had since birth, and what you can actually change is the enzymatic expression based on various factors, and I'm going to explain that. Everybody likes to know about the SNPs and what they mean. Remember that the SNPs are an estimate of what the gene slash enzyme, how it functions, okay, innately. Normal is like an 8-lane highway, and that's usually in green. Heterozygous, which is usually in yellow, is about a 4-lane highway or 60% enzyme function. And homozygous, which is usually in red, is about a 20% enzyme function. And what that all means is that if you have no traffic, like when you were a baby, didn't have a lot of traffic, there's no problems. No, that doesn't matter if you have, you know, compound heterozygous MTHFR. It doesn't matter because there's no traffic. Okay, but when there is traffic, obviously the 2-lane highway is going to get blocked up before the 4-lane highway, and the 4-lane highway will get blocked up before the 8-lane highway. But you can have enough traffic. Look at the bottom left, where the 8-lane highway gets really blocked up. So just because it's green doesn't mean it's good to go. Now, these SNPs or polymorphisms are only relevant in relation to their function within a particular pathway. Looking at a single gene is always a mistake. You have to look at the pathway. And the presence or absence of vitamins or minerals, cofactors or coenzymes that will help determine their overall function. If you don't have these, the enzyme will work, but much more slowly. Is that good English? I don't know. Anyway, there's also a series of things that slow it down and things that speed it up. And of course, the relationship of what you're looking at in a genetic test with the presenting complaints and relevant testing for each person. Always remember when you're looking at genetics or genetic test that the presence of a SNP does not mean you're ill, and the absence of a SNP does not mean you're well. It requires interpretation. Then in the second week, we talked about pathways. What is a pathway? A pathway is a series of enzymes that are created from the genes, don't forget, that turn what we consume, the substrate, into what our bodies need to work. So in the folate pathway, okay, you have folate coming out of the gut. It goes through several enzymatic changes to create this big long name 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. And MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, reduces that to 5-methylfolate, which is what our bodies use. Okay, so guess what? There are a lot of steps here. And it's a real mistake, like I've said before, and I'm going to keep on saying it until everybody gets it. Okay, it's a mistake to concentrate on a single gene. No one gene, like MTHFR, is a deity or a devil, and it's not sitting in the tall grass waiting on you. It has to be considered in the pathway itself. This is my pathway that creates and degrades excitatory neurotransmitters, like where tyrosine goes to L-dopa and then it creates dopamine. And I added a few things. This is the earlier version of strategy, okay, from Dr. Ben Lynch. And you can see that my DBH, dopamine beta hydroxylase, is red, as is my MAO, and my COMT is heterozygous. So what can we learn from this? It means that I will probably have higher dopamine, which means when I get upset, it'll hang on for a really long time, okay, before it actually degrades down to epinephrine, norepinephrine, and so forth, okay? And that might express as anxiety, OCD, ADD, all the way up to schizophrenia. What does this pathway need to work? Well, it needs inhibitory support. In other words, to balance the excitation, you need inhibition, the creation of serotonin and GABA, and you probably need all the vitamins that you're looking at on the left side of the screen. This is my histamine pathway. Okay, and the reason I showed you this, like I did last time, is let's look at the left-hand side where histamine gets broken down from by DAO, which is imine oxidase. Okay, it turns into an aldehyde, and then the aldehyde dehydrogenase ALDH family breaks it into acetic acid, which allows it to be excreted. Okay, on the middle you see what the cofactors are. The green writing where it says B6, B5, copper, calcium, water, and so forth and so on, is what those enzymes need to work. And even if it's slow, like you see in the purple, even if it's slow, okay, if you don't have those cofactors and coenzymes, vitamins and minerals, it'll work significantly slower. And of course, in the middle goes to MAO A and B, and again, that creates an aldehyde, and the aldehyde dehydrogenase breaks it into acetic acid. And down there, where you see upregulating factors, which in this case is zinc, hydrogen sulfide, vitamin B3, and up again towards the left-hand side, up where you see NAT2, factors that downregulate it. In this case, is estrogen, Tylenol, quercetin, curcumin, licorice, garlic, or grapefruit. Most of the times, what you're going to see if you look down at the ALDH family, you're going to see that it's inflammatory products, reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species, oxidized fatty acids, and so forth. This is my folate pathway. Okay, there's a lot of purple. Just go down the middle. Okay, there's a lot of purple there. Okay, so guess what? It's not going to work very well given traffic. Okay, what does it need to work? NAD, ATP. Okay, which if my mitochondria aren't working, it's going to be a problem. And the conclusion here is that I might not be able to create that product that you see right near MTHFR called 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolase. MTHFR seems to be working well, but if I don't have enough substrate, if I don't have my cofactors and coenzymes, I might not produce enough 5-methylfolate. Might. By the way, this is not all of methylation. Methylation is much more extensive. This is maybe 1/3 the process. So don't anybody let you down the garden path and say MTHFR is all methylation. Let me show you why. Here's the entire methylation pathway. You see the MTHFR on the bottom. If you go to the right and go up to MTR and MTRR, that's how you create methylcobalamin or methyl B12. Follow towards the north and around, you have the methionine that creates SAM. The big word for SAM is S-adenosylmethionine. Okay, that is your methyl donor. This is what methylation is all about. Your body takes SAM, moves it around, and turns things on and off, and regulates your genome, which is like the hardwiring on your computer, so that your body works well. Okay, that's the whole purpose of methylation. A lot of people have taken that and I like to say bastardized, excuse the expression, but no one area is responsible for methylation. It's an interaction of all these areas, and we're not even showing you all the other pathways that are involved and are associated with this. In my opinion, the best genetic test you can get is Stratagene by Dr. Ben Lynch. You can see just type in Stratagene in Google or anywhere else, and you'll get to this site. Okay, it accepts the raw data from 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and Self-Decode. Not only gives you the polymorphisms or SNPs, it puts them in the pathways for you so you can see it and gives you a boatload of explanations. Okay, and if you want to do this on your own and want to understand your genes, that's the best thing to do, in my opinion. There are a lot of tests out there, but Dr. Ben doesn't recommend particular products. He gives you an idea of what would help, but he doesn't push you to his products, where a lot of other, I've told you before, a lot of other programs do, or doesn't just give you a list of polymorphisms or SNPs, and then you have to figure it out on your own. Okay? So, what we've learned thus far, that pathways are a series of enzymes created from the genes that turn what you consume, your substrate, into what your body needs to heal and function. All polymorphisms should be considered as part of a pathway, never by themselves. A pathway with polymorphisms might, and I look at it, might slow down the production of the products you need, but only if there's traffic. Okay? Only if there's traffic. So what now? Okay, you want to know what to do. I want you to remember that your genotype or your genes interact with the environment. Okay? Just picture that for a moment. How can you change a gene? You can't. You can't change the gene, but you can change or normalize genetic expression, which means your symptoms. This is done by maximizing the function of the enzymes, and I'm going to go over it yet again. If you remember the cell danger response from one of my earlier podcasts, okay, things that affect the cells, spike protein, chemical and physical stuff, microbial loads, and all the psychological, emotional, and spiritual traumas that we face. This is what injures cells and creates that oxidative stress load or chronic inflammation. So you need to make environmental changes. And you go, what? Okay. Remember when we talked about an enzyme being created from the genes, what it needs to work? Well, vitamins and minerals, the stuff, and substrate, the stuff that you eat. And attention towards reducing toxic load, microbial influences, the spike protein from COVID, and reducing the effects of the psychological, emotional, and spiritual traumas. And so here's some basic things you can do. And it may seem very trite, but guess what? This is what people don't do. Clean water, organic food, absorbable multivitamins and multiminerals. Think liposomal or liquid. If you're taking tablets, throw them out. Okay, you're not absorbing much. Okay, liposomal goes directly into the cells, or liquid. I know Dr. Ben's products are really, really good because I know how he makes them. Okay, but if you see liposomal, that's going to go directly into the cells. And liquid is a lot easier to absorb than powders. And then there's capsules, which are easy, but not as easy as powders or liquid or liposomal. And then tablets, which usually don't get very well absorbed. And you need to identify and eradicate the aforementioned, which it says forementioned. Sorry, I didn't type that right. Okay, that's what happens for dictating, like the toxic load and etc. So, seems real simple, huh? Why do lay people and especially practitioners not practice this as a basic protocol? Frankly, seems too simple. It's not sexy enough. And I mean that sincerely because guess what? We go after the sexy. We go after the big words. We go after the glitz. Okay? You can help by understanding what I've just said and by demanding this kind of work be done with you. Not, okay, just take a multivitamin. No, really paying attention. You need to treat the leaky gut syndrome because it's almost always present and creates or magnifies chronic inflammation. Leaky gut syndrome, the way to treat that is by improving digestion, recreating a mucus layer, healing the cells, and perhaps, if it's necessary, putting in proper probiotics to reestablish the microbiome. It's not that hard to do, but people only do part of it. Okay? So if you demand that this kind of work be done with you, okay, your practitioner should. If they do it partially, they're not really giving you what you need, in my opinion, okay? And if all they're doing is treating the end result, okay, instead of treating you from the cellular level on outward, well, there's a problem there, again, in my opinion. So, what do you think about when choosing a practitioner? Okay? What training and experience do they possess? Do they understand genetics, or are they depending on a computer program which they're showing you for the interpretation and the recommendation of supplements? Okay. Are they a specialist in methylation? Well, this is a narrow focus. And frankly, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So when you have a Lyme practitioner, everything looks like Lyme. You have a chronic fatigue practitioner, everything's chronic fatigue. Frankly, all chronic illnesses kind of have the same set of symptoms. Okay, so they all look like one another. And here's the thing, will they listen to you and consider everything? We don't need more specialist people. Okay, we've got tons of them out there. Okay, we need a doctor who has eclectic experience and is willing to do the work. That means a generalist. Okay, and I know that that term is ostracized. It shouldn't be. The old GP, the old generalist, was your advocate, knew loads of things, knew when to refer you to a specialist, and that specialist would report to him or her, and that was the doctor you trusted because they took care of all of you. Okay, that was true holistic treatment. Okay, that's what we really need these days in my humble opinion. So that's it on genetics. Next week, we're going to start talking about adrenal fatigue. We'll do a few shows on adrenal fatigue, which is the other scourge of mankind, okay? Okay. Tell your friends, subscribe to my YouTube channel, okay? If you need to ask a question, Jess at drjessarmine.com. I'll answer you, I promise. Okay, if I don't answer you within 24 hours, send it again because I get a lot of emails. If you want to see if I can help you, just go to my website, drjessarmine.com, and book a free 30-minute get acquainted phone conference. Why should you treat with me? Well, I'm that guy that has 5 decades of experience. I have an eclectic experience. You see, I was a paramedic, a registered nurse, and I also have my doctorate in chiropractic. I have expertise in epigenetics, forensics, and so forth, and so on, and so on, and so on. And frankly, they call me the Sherlock Holmes of chronic illness because I bring all of my experience to each case. And never forget, people, if no one told you that they loved you today, remember, Dr. Jess does. I'll see you next week.